Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Kylie Campbell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Darian White. 2026 marks 125 years of dedicated service by the Australian Army and its predecessors. Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Allan Stewart Robb. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Member of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Dr. Karen Bird. We warmly welcome the President of Women's Veteran Network Australia, Ms. Melanie Enard, and the delegation representing the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare and Department of Veterans Affairs. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Joseph's Catholic Primary School visiting from Gilgandra, New South Wales. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students and those who are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Allan Stewart Robb. Allan Robb was born on the 4th of January 1919 in Orange, New South Wales. He was one of 7 children born to Walter Edwin Robb, a labourer, and his wife Evelyn. Allan grew up around the town of Leeton and was educated at Leeton Intermediate High School with his younger brother Lindsay, with whom he was extremely close. At school, Allan trained as a cadet and later joined the 56th Battalion of the local militia. He was a well-known bagpipe player with Leeton's Scottish Pipe Band. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, Allan was working as a mechanic at the Leeton Cannery. In early 1940, Allan Robb married his sweetheart, Esme Minchin. A few months later, he travelled to Walgrove with his brother, Lindsay, where they enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 3rd of July 1940. The brothers were both assigned to the 2nd 19th Battalion before starting a period of training in Australia. Allan had a short period of home leave in December before returning to his unit just after Christmas 1940. On the 2nd of February, the Robb brothers embarked for active service from Sydney on board the troop ship Queen Mary. The men of the 2nd 19th Battalion disembarked in Singapore and moved north to Seremban in southern Malaya. There they trained to fight in tropical conditions. The battalion rotated between Seremban and Port Dickson on the coast, during which time Robb was promoted to corporal. As war with Japan seemed increasingly likely, Robb's battalion was relocated to Kluang in September 1941, where they were responsible for the defence of the airfield. A month later, they were moved to Jerma Luang on the east coast of Malaya and began developing defensive positions around the vital road junction there. By December, Japan had entered the war and Allied units in Malaya found themselves in the thick of the fighting. The men of the 219th were not drawn into action until January, however, by which time the Japanese forces had managed to push Allied units closer and closer towards Singapore Island. Robb and his comrades fought their first major action at Bakri on the 19th of January, holding out against the enemy long enough to allow the 45th Indian Brigade and their comrades in the 2nd 29th Battalion to withdraw. By this stage, Japanese forces had outflanked the 2nd 19th's position and the battalion was forced to begin withdrawing towards the town of Parit Sulong. They had to fight their way through a succession of Japanese roadblocks while being attacked from the air and from the rear. When they reached Parit Sulong, Robb and his comrades were confronted by Japanese forces occupying the town and the bridge. Fierce fighting ensued. The following day, the battalion war diary recorded, attempt to take the bridge failed. Further casualties, many of whom were killed. At about 1100 hours, there was a general order to withdraw. The majority of the walking wounded were left by this time. For about 3/4 of an hour prior to this, the trucks carrying the badly wounded had been shelled, bombed, and machine-gunned. Several trucks had been blown up and others were on fire. 2nd 19th suffered over 150 casualties by the time it decided to withdraw. Among those who were killed was Corporal Allan Robb. Over the following weeks, Allied units forced back onto Singapore Island. After heavy fighting, the Allies surrendered to the Japanese and more than 130,000 British and Dominion personnel became prisoners of war. Among them was Allan Robb's brother, Lindsay. He died of illness in Thailand in 1943 as a prisoner of the Japanese. Corporal Allan Robb's final resting place was never found. Today, he's commemorated on the Singapore Memorial at Kranji, amongst almost 25,000 others who have no known grave. Corporal Allan Robb was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Allan Stewart Robb, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man, lying out there in Pozières, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.